programs with park staff for in-county residents, say there's a naturalist at a program, those are still free. They're still free. What we did, she mentioned housekeeping, is if you reserve one of our shelters in the winter, you pay utility fee. From 0 to 4 hours is $15, 4 hours to 8 hours is $30, anything over 8 hours it's $40 to $55. So we applied that to our Westwoods and our Myers Center, but no, we'll bring it back and take another look at it.
I mean, it's $15 and.
For 0 to 4 hours.
Right.
For
So
utility fee.
if they've got a group coming in and they charge everybody 50 cents and 30 people show up, what can you do for 50 cents in the world? Can't even get a cup of coffee anymore. Okay? So we need to revisit that and see what we want to do. How many of those programs we have? You know, if it's going to be a 0 to 4 hour program, perhaps we absorb the $15 an hour if it's a Geauga resident. Whatever you all come up with.
Bring it back.
Yes.
I'm sorry too, in my ignorance, I may have just confused two things. See, that's what happens when people spout off to me and they don't know anything and then I turn about it. The travel log programs, if those are still in existence and they're free, that's a wonderful thing. I'm glad for that. I thought it was going to be $140 for the guy getting the travel logs.
No,
I was a little
they're
mixed up on
free.
it. Okay.
And they're on the program, they're already.
Yeah, it's in our newsletter, it's hosted by park staff, it's free.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
That's perfect for John to say. Because
Thank you.
some things I take that everybody would know. So if it's in our newsletter, there's no charge. Okay?
Unless it's designated with a charge. Yeah, sometimes we have a
We would
workshop.
specify.
Yeah. program.
Well, Michelle's just referring to, there's a workshop and there's an artist, and it's all spelled out in the newsletter.
They have to bring some supplies and you're gonna make something, sometimes we have to pass that on, but, yeah, usually you come to a program, it's completely free for a Geauga County resident.
And I think they've left you exactly 3 minutes.
Yeah, Buckles, Troy Township, like you don't know. Thank you. Thank you for your kind comments about our program at Orchard Hills. And thank you for being concerned about something beyond Geauga Park. That's absolutely correct. And the natural resources presentation is just absolutely perfect. We really appreciate that. One of the things, just to follow up on what was being talked about with the trapping, John was kind enough to send us materials on the current trapping program. And I saw that in the September 18 proposal for the trapping lottery, 5 parks with specific animals and specific locations were outlined. As Frank pointed out, in the permits that were given out, only one of them had an animal specified, none of them had a location specified. Moreover, the 5 parks that were identified by Natural Resources, only 4 of them were included in the permits. Frowning Meadows was left out for whatever reason, but 7 parks were identified. Why the discrepancy between what Natural Resources proposes in order to maintain the biological integrity of the parks versus the number of permits given out? There were no complaints identified with those extra permits. Could you help me out there?
And did your original recommendation have Rolling Meadows?
It did, but it was left out of the list.
Throwing originally, I believe the Rangers had some concerns after we revisited and talked about the impact they were having on the dam area because we're concerned about creating an issue with flooding if the dam failed. Then they did add it back.
I think what's important, my mic's dead. I think what's important to know, Ed, is that if we're doing wildlife management, and this is coming from, we've got a former natural resource manager, and Phil Gingrich sitting in the back of the room, and I used to work for him. I was natural resource manager for a time. Paul is now head of that department. The recommendations are reciprocated with the natural resource management department. If there, let me finish. If there are mistakes, there are housekeeping issues in how our rangers oversee in the field, our hunters and trappers, then we need to take a look at that. I agree with one of the things that hasn't happened is I'm stuck with these public records requests to try to disseminate email-only communications as opposed to what would be the simple decency of someone picking up the phone and asking me questions. That's hard for me to interpret, and then we get here in a public setting. That's the only way I have of reciprocating that information. We'll be happy to take a look at our permits.
Okay, well,
and housekeeping.
there are 7 permits issued when 5 parks were identified by natural resources. And so the parks don't line up with the permits. There are no animals identified except for one instance. Then, oddly enough, included in the permit is Burton Wetlands, which is a state nature preserve. And if you look at the ODNR regulations for state nature reserves, certain activities such as water parks, skateboarding, etc., are banned from state nature preserves, as is hunting and trapping. Why are we trapping on a state nature preserve?
That wasn't on your original? No? Okay. Let's take a look at it.
Because that's a violation of the regs. With the people who are doing the trapping, it has the appearance of recreational or commercial trapping versus protection of biological integrity, and that concerns me greatly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
What were those 2 additional parks that you alluded to? Burton Wetlands was one, what was the other? What was the other?
John, you have a list?
Yeah, just a second.
You know, this is an educational moment for everyone. So the Burton's Nature Preserve, what I'm hearing from you, Ed, is that if we have animals out of control on that preserve, we can't do anything about it. We have to let them destroy the preserve. Phil, you're shaking your head.
It has to be proven that they're destroying the habitat or infrastructure.
Okay,
And if that's not happening,
so you can, if in fact they are.
and you cannot do anything there unless it's discussed with ODNR.
Okay. I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
Those other 2 areas that were the Burton Wetlands, the Best Preserve, and Westwoods, none of those 3 were on natural resource, the information we had from Natural Resource Management. None of those 3 were on the recommended. This was the list of the recommendations from them from last fall. Now, certainly we would have known since when fall was, when the trapping season started, one would think. But somehow those 3, who decided to put those 3 on? Can anybody tell me?
Burton Wetlands and,
Westwoods and
I know Paul came back.
Best Preserve.
Yeah.
None of those were from Natural Resource Management on their sheet we got from you folks, on her recommendations from last fall. None of those 3 were. So we put them on.
I'll take responsibility for it. You know.
Okay. I think at this point, we want to make a motion for the executive session. I would second that.
Reason?
We have legal reasons.
Personnel and land acquisition.
Yeah, personnel, land acquisition, and legal.
Will there be a couple of legal
I don't think it's going to be coming back with anything. Do you? I don't think so. No. I mean, some of it's information that I gotta give Dave, which I just read to you all on agenda, so it's already been publicly announced. Yes, we did. Vote.
Mrs. Shumway.
Yes.
Congratulations.